Let's talk about the Draconic Destruction upgrades, starting with reading our commander. It has Flying, Trample, it's a 6/4 dragon, and it says whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike until end of turn. So this deck is all about dragons. Starting with the dragons we're going to add, we have Chaos Dragon for 1 red. It's a 4/4 Flying Haste Dragon. It attacks each combat if able. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each player rolls a d20. If one or more opponents had the highest result, Chaos Dragon can't attack those players or planeswalkers this combat. So for 3 mana, we can get 8 damage to an opponent or a creature with our commander on the battlefield. Destructor Dragon. It's a 4/4 dragon with flying. When it dies, we get to destroy a target non-creature permanent, so potentially 8 damage with our commander out. And I really think this is going to give our opponents a hard choice. Would they rather take 8 damage, or do they want to lose one of their non-creature permanents? This can be one of their enchantments or artifacts. Earthquake Dragon. It costs a lot of mana, but it's going to cost X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of dragons we control, which already our commander is 7 mana. And throw in a couple more dragons, we can end up casting this for only 1 green mana. It's a 10/10 flying trample creature. We can pay 2 and a green to sack a land and return this from our graveyard to our hand. And we're looking at 20 damage with our commander on the battlefield. Thracus the Butcher. It's a 3/4 dragon with trample. Whenever Thracus the Butcher attacks, double the power of each dragon you control until end of turn. This in combination with our commander is going to give us quadruple damage, which is very silly. Moving on to some mana reduction, we have Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind. It's a mana rock that costs 2 and a red. We can tap it to add a red mana, and if it was spent on a dragon creature spell, that dragon's going to gain haste until end of turn, and with our commander out, that can be a lot of potential damage. Goblin Archomancer. So each spell that's red or green is going to cost us 1 less, and this is a really good thing for our deck. While it's not a dragon, all of our spells are going to cost 1 less if they're red or green. Moving on to the card draw of the deck, we have Court of Bounty. So when this enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch, and that means if we're the Monarch at the end of our turn, we get to draw a card. If an opponent deals us combat damage, we lose Monarch, and then they gain Monarch. At the beginning of our upkeep, you can put a land onto the battlefield from your hand. If you're the Monarch, instead put a creature or land from your hand onto the battlefield. So we can just drop these huge dragons from our hand onto the battlefield, or we can get that extra land drop to cast more dragons. Outpost Siege. When it enters the battlefield, we can choose Khans or dragons. For this example, I'm talking about Khans, because at the beginning of our upkeep, we can exile the top card of our library. Until end of turn, we can play that card. So it's as if we drew that card this turn, but we're going to lose it unless we cast it that turn. Return of the Wildspeaker. Since we have huge dragons in these decks, let's talk about drawing cards to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. For example, our commander is a 6/4. That's 6 cards we can be drawing, but it also has non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn, so this can be an overrun for us, which we can deal even more damage, potentially 6 more damage for each creature with our commander. The last one I want to mention is Skyline Despot. When it enters the battlefield, we become a Monarch. This is also a 5/5 flyer, and at the beginning of our upkeep, if you're the Monarch, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. Very powerful card right here. Now let's talk about the cards to remove from the deck. These are cards I would be removing, so let's start with Akum Hellkite, Demanding Dragon, Foe Razor Regent, and Furnace Whelp. These are all dragons I think we could have better replacements for with the cards that we're adding. There's also a Tarka Monument, which is a mana rock, but we have better ones that we're adding already. There's also Harbinger of the Hunt, Horde Smelter Dragon, Provoke the Trolls, and Spitflame. These are all cards I think are not the best for this deck. Definitely could be some better cards in here. And the last one is Sarcon the Dragon Speaker. I was not impressed with this planeswalker. Yes, it's dragon themed, but I'd rather have something that does more. If you want any of these cards, I'll have them all linked in the description down below, even the cards to remove. Thank you all so much for watching. Check out this playlist for the rest of the Commander starter decks, and thank you to the patrons who help support this show. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.